Order of creation. Our first stop along the journey through this lecture series is to establish the first order of creation. Not only is this the most logical point for us to start, but we're going to see soon that looking deeper into the order of creation, many folks will read over this section. And I say many folks because not everyone who is a believer in the Christian faith, or, there will be others who are non-Christians that'll read over this. And so they're going to get a sense of reading over the order of creation and maybe just make a few mental notes of things. But what I want to do is I want to get a good understanding of how God created all things. Now, this may be from those of you who have experienced any type of Bible study, whether adult Bible study or Sunday school from a children's perspective, or even from an adult perspective. There may be times when your teacher will have gone into a greater dive into the creation order of things, but there are a large amount of people who, whether you're non-religious or whether you have a history in Christianity, you may have gone over this section and maybe just skimmed over it, or you do have a good understanding of how all things are created. And so this could be just a short refresher for you. But when you stop to admire the text of the first part of the creation, you'll start to see how in depth everything really is. For the sake of this study and this lecture series into the divine rebellion, we're going to take a look for some clues and establish somewhat of a timeline of sorts for the creation and the events that lead up to the first rebel, which is part of the first series in the rebellion lecture series. And so we're gonna take a look at this. We're gonna just jump through a couple of different texts here and take a look at the order of creation and not go super deep into it because there is so much content that can go over these things. There are way better scholars out there that can go into greater depth. But for the purpose of this lecture series and this study series, we're just going to cover a few basic areas. So we're going to take a start in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Throughout this lecture series, I will be using the Bible version of the New American Standard Bible 2020 for the clarity in translation for online purposes and in-person lecture series here. It's just a little bit easier for the palate to accept. So bear in mind, if you see this there, you can use any translation you would like. It isn't preferenced that you use NASB 2020 or 1995 or ESV. There will be one section throughout the series where I will deviate and use the ESV specifically because of the Masoretic texts that we get our information from. But for this purpose, we're going to just look at Genesis 1 through the eyes of NASB 2020, just because of the way the language is brought out. But okay, enough talk about that. Let's get into it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was a formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. I'm going to stop there. You can keep reading the slide there on your screen here. But in the very beginning, we have this really unique element here first. We first get right in the very beginning, the very first four words. God created the heavens and the earth. But also I want to point out here is that the word heavens here comes first before the earth. So before the earth, before anything else was created, the heavens were created prior to that. Also take note here that the earth was formless and void. So there was really the world pre-creation, or in the portions of creation there, it was a chaotic environment as it was. It's desolate emptiness. There was darkness over the surface of the deep. The Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters, and then that's when God moves on and says, "Okay, let there be light." There was light. God saw that there was light, and it was good. Then He separated the light from the darkness. This isn't to say that this is with the creation of the sun and the stars. That doesn't happen yet. That the celestial bodies aren't there. Light and darkness were were separate from each other at this point. So there was darkness there in the beginning, and then God created light and darkness, and that's the very first instance we have of light and darkness. Really, that's the process of light and darkness creating that point. So God creates the heavens, and then he creates the earth. He creates the rest of creation as we move on. God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from waters." God made the expanse and separated the waters that were below the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning on the second day. Okay, so not to be confused with what has been found in verse 1 when God created the heavens and the earth. What we're talking about here, or I guess what the author of Genesis is talking about here, is that we've gone from the heavens. The heavenly realm has been designed already and created. And if you look at the language there, when it says that there was evening and there was morning on the first and second day, the word day there is yom, which yes, it does mean day, but it also means an expanse of time. So it could be day, or it could be an expanse of time. It could be an eon. It's a yom. It's just a placeholder for what we could use as day or an expanse of time. So the heavens could have been in existence for quite a long time before God moved on to creating the earth, which is the expanse, which is literally space, the heavens, the sky, and he creates the waters from below. And so he creates a barrier. He creates the atmosphere for the earth, where he moves the waters. He separates from the waters of the earth below from the waters of the sky, which is where we see the dome around the earth, which is we call our atmosphere. And within that, so the dome itself and the expanse that goes into the infinite of the universe itself, that is called the heavens, right? And so now on the second day, God separates the earth. He protects it with a dome that surrounds us, an atmosphere where he keeps in place, and he keeps the heavens in its place in that sense. And then beyond that, he creates all of the rest of creation. At this point, it's completely empty, but it's still, there's the expanse above, and then there's the expanse below, which is the earth itself, which has water over it. And at this point, I don't believe there is any land yet. But again, I want to point out, don't get confused with verses 1 where we see the heavens and the earth there. The heavens that are being spoken about there, we're talking about that's the heavenly realm, and the heavens that are found further in Genesis, after Genesis 6, we're talking about the space part of heavens. Okay, so let's carry on to verses 9 through 13. God creates vegetation on the earth. This is where he brings out the earth. He separates the waters from the ground. In those verses there, God creates, in verses 14 through 19, God creates the sun, the moon, the heavens, and other space elements. Verses 20 to 23, God creates fish, birds, bugs, and other creeping things on the earth. Verses 24 to 25, God creates animals. And 26 to 31, God makes the man in the image of God. And that's an interesting one, but we're not going to dive too deep into this one here just yet. We will cover that in a future session here. In this one here, again, I just want to set the stage. Like I said, we're not going to go too deep into the explanation of the creation, but what the major point of this particular setup is for us to understand the heavens that are in the spiritual sense and the heavens that are in the physical sense. Okay, so moving on to a few notes here about Genesis 1 through 1. Let's again highlight it again here. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, verses 14 through 19. We're going to note here the order of creation in verses 1 and 14 and 19. The earth was formless, void, no other meaning. There's no other meaning or intention to that other than there was light and darkness at that point. Stars were not created until verses 14 through 19. So again, if God created, and this is where some people may think this, and it's it is incorrect when you think about it this way, that when, you know, in the very beginning, God, verse 1, God created the heavens, he created the stars, and he created the universe, and he created the nebulas, and all of the spatial bodies, and all of the stars within the universe, and the expanse of all these things, and all those things came to place, and then the earth was formed after that. I agree, I disagree with that, because in verses 14 through 19, and this is my take on it, right? This is my understanding of these things. There are others out there who are theologians who would also disagree with me and say that, well, you know, verses 1 just tells you he created the heavens first and he created the earth. And verses 14 through 19 will go back and say, hey, you know, this is an explanation of how that verse 1 expands. I tend to disagree with that. From the way the rest of the scriptures are designed, the way the rest of the Bible is set up, it points, there's more evidence that points towards the fact that God created the spiritual realm first, then he created the actual heavens itself there as a representation of what has already been created. Okay, so the earth was formless and void. He doesn't create stars until verses 19. That's where he creates, through 14 through 19, God creates the sun, he creates the moon to govern over the day and over the night. He creates the stars and the expanse to show the seasons and the times. Uses it for navigational purposes, or at least humans use it for navigational purposes, which we'll actually find out a little bit more once we get into some further, we get into a further exploration of these sessions here. We will actually uncover where navigation kind of comes from, which is kind of interesting, because astrology is something that's very, it used to be super big, and it kind of fades in and out, but it is coming back. So that's interesting. The heavens spoken here again. I want to reiterate there that here, this is the spiritual heavens were created first over creation, and then the creation of the earth and the rest of the universe was created after the fact. Okay, so let's look about, we're going to take a quick note here again. We're going to look just a little bit more closely at verses 14 through 19 that explain this a little bit deeper, just because, again, I want to just really solidify the fact that verse 1 is the spiritual realm. Verses 6 through 19, really the rest of creation. We find here in verse 14 through 19 that when God said, let there be lights, this would be stars in the expanse, which is space. And we've already determined there in verses 6 there that the waters that were separated into the atmosphere, and then the expanse the above was called the heavens. That's where stars are created, and that's what we call space today. So the heavens, again, space, separate the day from the night, and the stars, shall serve as signs and seasons for the days and years, and the stars, serve as lights, stars, in the expanse, which is space, of the heavens, which is space, to give light on earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the sun and the moon, the greater light being the sun to govern the day, and the lesser light, which is the moon, to govern the night. He made the stars also. He placed them in the expanse, which is space, and the heaven of the heavens, which is also space, to give light on earth and to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was day and morning on the fourth day. Yom, which is the Hebrew word is yom, which is often translated as eon. So yom. So we have this fourth day creation. We now see God utilizing his first creation, which was light and darkness, that both light and darkness existed prior to stars and everything else. And then he utilizes light and darkness to keep them separated by using specific, well, in this case here, stars, which are essentially giant gas balls that are on fire. So he utilizes the creation to purpose out the first part of creation, which is found in verses 1 through to 6. All right, and so I hope that this first little section here gives us a little bit of a understanding of where this study is going to be going. This really is just the first little bit, the introductory part of what's about to happen. We haven't even got into rebellions yet. It does take a while for us to set up that portion of it. But what the purpose of this first session here is to kind of get you to start to think about the way things were created, the way to maybe challenge your current understanding of how the creation took place, to not just look at Genesis chapter 1 and go, you know what, cool, God created all these things, God created the universe, great. I want you to take just to stop, really think about this and go, where did the heavens really come from? What does verse 1 really mean? Does God really create the spiritual realm first, or does he create the universe first? Like, does this fit together? Like, I want these questions to kind of start come up into your mind, because as we go further into this narrative, and again, this is a narrative structure. We're not talking scientific we're not talking science here as in like this is exactly how it happened. These are narrative structures. These are stories that are designed to tell the story of creation. It's not, we're not talking a huge tome of text that tells you exactly how every molecule interacts with each other in the universe and things like that. What this does is it helps gear us towards, okay, we're getting a divine story here where God, who set the stage, first he creates the spiritual realm, then he creates the physical realm. He starts to populate these things. He uses things such as in verse 1, where he creates the light and the darkness. He utilizes that in verses 14 through 19 when he uses the stars and the moon, and he uses the celestial bodies to govern and signs of seasons and navigation. Well, future is navigation. We'll talk about that. But he starts to really to go into this a little bit further, but he utilizes light and darkness in this first portion of it here. So we could kind of start seeing early on, it's like, okay, we've got a significant separation of the heavenly realms and the physical realms, because what is in the heavens typically is reflected in the creation as well, which is interesting. So start to think about these things as we move forward into these sessions. Our next session, we're going to be talking about the heavens specifically. Just a little bit of a little bit of context for the next section. Moving forward, we're going to be talking about who are in the heavens. We're going to be talking about what do the heavens look like from a biblical perspective. We're going to start talking about the sons of God, which is a really interesting topic. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into some Mesopotamian understanding of what throne guardians were or are. We're going to talk a little bit about what the sons of God look like. We're going to talk a little bit more about the functionings of the of cherubs and seraphim as well. So that's going to be in our next little section there. So we're going to kind of go a little bit away from just the creation story. We're going to talk a little bit first about the heavens, who populates the heavens, what do they look like, what does the heavens look like, what are their functionalities, what are angels, kind of essentially just a little bit about that before we move on to the third section there. So that's coming up in the next section. So please stay tuned for that. If you do enjoy this little preview of what's going on, and you wanted to see the next one, please follow along. Like, subscribe to this channel if this is going to be something that interests you a little bit further. You want a little bit more about this there. Again, if you're a spiritual leader, or even if you're an academic and you want to learn more about this, you could follow along with the series that is going on. You could also contact me at barrymossup@gmail.com. I'm Chaplain Barry, your host of this, and I can host these whether they are Bible studies for your group. I can host them as online webinars. We could do a seminar at a hosted location as well. So please give me a shout, smash that like button if you can, and I will see all of you in the next session. Order of creation. Our first